Welcome to the Forefront Radio. Welcome to the Forefront Radio. I'm your host, Afia Levi Israel. Hope everybody's doing all right. Hope everybody's doing all right. Shalom to you, family. Welcome to the Forefront Radio, where we uncover the hidden histories that the world has tried to erase. Today, we examine the dark legacy of Rhodesia, modern-day Zimbabwe, how our Afrohebraic people of these lands endured horrific oppression under the European conquest. We will also connect this history to prophecies of the Bible, showing you that the children of Israel are among us, scattered across Africa, scattered across the Americas, and globally all across the planet. Let's talk about Rhodesia, a land seized in blood. The story of Rhodesia begins with the arrival of Cecil Rhodes and the British South Africa Company in the late 1800s. Rhodes and his empire builders carved up African lands through deception and force. The Matabele and Mashona peoples, proud nations descended from ancient African Israelite roots, saw their land stripped away. The settlers claimed gold, cattle, and fertile soil, while the indigenous populations were driven into forced labor and taxation. Now, why is that important? It's important because this fits Bible prophecy. This fits directly into the scriptures about what would happen to our people in these last days. And it's important for us to understand these things while we teach the Bible. Let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 15. It says, "But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do all these commandments which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee." What is an example of a generational curse that happened to our people? Let's find out. So let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 28 and let's read verse 33. It says, "The fruit of the land." What does the Bible say? The fruit of thy land. The fruit of thy land goes into what? Your natural resources. "And all thy labor," what is that going into? Forced labor, aka captivity, aka slavery, "shall a nation which thou knowest not eat up, and thou shalt be only oppressed and crushed always." Y'all, this is colonialism in the Bible. This is slavery in the Bible, folks. Why did we not learn this during church? Why did they never tell you that this is talking about our people? Let's read on. It says, "So that thou shalt be mad for the sight of thine eyes, which thou shalt see." Verse 36, "The Lord shall bring thee and thy king, which is over thee, to a nation which thou and thy fathers have not known. And there thou shalt serve other gods, wood and stone." Now watch this. In 1893, the British waged war against King Lobengula and the Matabele nation. Despite fierce resistance, the invaders used rifles, Maxim guns, and scorched tactics, including villages being burned to the ground. Thousands upon thousands perished. Rhodesia was not built by pioneers seeking freedom. It was built on blood, chains, and stolen land. This is according to The History of Rhodesia by Howard Hensman. So this important information that we're receiving, how can we never learn that in history class? How can we never learn the connection between the lost tribes of Israel and history? It's very important for us to understand that there are Black Jews in Africa and the Americas, plural, all over the place, y'all. Now let's talk about the horrors of colonization. By the early 20th century, Rhodesia became a colony of the exploitation. Israelites were forced into mines, taxed beyond measure, and stripped of ancestral lands. Eurocentric settlers built fortunes while Black families starved. Now, this is the crazy thing about it, y'all. I woke up from a dream literally this morning, where in the dream, we're working on copper mines, digging for copper, digging for gold, and all of this stuff, right? And I brought this big box of like 5 or 6 big, huge pieces of copper, right? Only for the person to pay me not with money, not with riches, but with one potato. Imagine you're working on a plantation or working on a mine for food. For food, literally, you're digging hours in the day, sweat pouring from your body, only to be paid one potato. And then you have a family of 8. So this is showing you how European settlers built their fortunes, while that one bag of huge stones could bring them $2,000 to $3,000 to $4,000, and they feed you with one potato. I want you to show how Black families starved. The same system that enslaved our brothers and sisters across the Atlantic was at work here in Africa itself. A historian by the name of Jeremy Black explains the Atlantic slave trade reshaped nations, robbed peoples of their identity, and inflicted generational trauma. Rhodesia was simply one chapter in this global captivity. Now, can we find biblical connections to the curses fulfilled? Why did this happen to our people? Why have the descendants of Africa faced slavery, colonization, and oppression at the hands of these nations? We find out directly in the Bible. Does the Bible talk about global captivity? Let's find out. Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 41. Thou shalt beget sons and daughters, but thou shalt not enjoy them, for they shall go into captivity. What's another word for captivity, folks? Slavery. Did our ancestors go into slavery in all nations? The answer is yes. Did we go into captivity in all nations where we were forced, right? Forced ownership and exploitation of one person by another, a practice that roots to ancient history and now illegal under international law, but is still going on to this day. Is that happening to our people? Yes. Has this happened to our people? Yes. We can prove it with history. We can prove it with history. Look at this right here. Look at this right here. Did this happen to our ancestors? The answer is yes. When we were taken into captivity, let me read the Bible verse again. It says, thou shalt beget sons and daughters, but thou shalt not enjoy them, for they shall go into captivity. What's another word for captivity, folks? Slavery. This happened to the indigenous populations of the Americas. Look at this image right here of a so-called Indian right here, and then a black woman at the bottom. And in the very background, you see a black man being whipped in the back. Here was another image of our people taken on slave ships. Here was another image of our people being whipped in the back. Here was another image of our people in shackles and chains. This history fulfills biblical prophecy. Here's another picture of our people on plantations with what? Picking cotton. Picking cotton. This history is our history. And it's right in the Bible, folks. It's right in the Bible. And they won't teach this in church. They won't teach this in seminaries. They won't teach this across the planet to educate the people on who the lost tribes of Israel are to this day. They won't do it. They won't do it. But guess what? We will have to educate our people. We will have to educate our people on their history. They're trying to remove this history from schools. They're trying to remove this history from education systems. They're even trying to remove this history from the Smithsonian Museum, y'all. So if you're not going to talk about your history, who will? If you're not going to tell the truth, who will? You have to show that we are the ancient Hebrews of the Bible. You have to show the truth because the Bible says you're going to know the truth and the truth will make you free. Now, Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 64 through 68 tells us something. It tells us how the children of Israel would be scattered among all nations, serving their enemies in hunger, in thirst, and nakedness. They would go into slavery on ships, and no man would redeem them. Let's read that. This is the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, verse 64. It says, And the Lord shall scatter thee among all people, from the one end of the earth even to the other. And there thou shalt serve other gods, which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone. Did that happen to our people? The answer is yes. Watch this. And among these nations shalt thou find no ease, neither shall the sole of thy foot have rest, but the Lord will give you a trembling heart and failing of eyes and sorrow of mind, meaning depression, anxiety, mental damage from the psychological warfare that happened to our people. Verse 66, and thy life shall hang in doubt before thee, and thou shalt fear day and night, and shall not have any assurance of your life. Now think about that for a second. Imagine being on a slave ship going to and forth, right? Rocking back and forth on a boat, throwing up, people having fecal matter and urine all over the place, right? You're in pitch black darkness in 90-degree heat and above, and you feel like you can't breathe. Then you have shackles on your feet and around your neck, and then you get dragged into a place where you don't know whether you're going to live or whether you're going to perish. And then if you make one mistake, the person that comes and snatches you can literally place you on rope on a tree. So you have no assurance day or night whether you would live or whether you would perish. This is in the Bible, y'all. Watch this. Verse 67. In the morning thou shalt say, would God it were evening. Why? Because you would be working as a slave, asking God, when is this day going to pass that I can have rest at night? And at evening thou shalt say, would God it were morning. Meaning what? Our women would get dragged in the middle of the night by these slave traders that forced the woman to work 14 hours in a day only to be assaulted by the same person that mistreated you. You brothers and sisters that's involved in marrying these nations that had a vested interest at oppressing you, you better wake up and smell the coffee. The coffee's black. Would God it were morning, for the fear of your heart, wherein thou shalt fear, for the sight of your eyes, which thou shalt see. Meaning, we witness children being taken away from their parents and not having any power to do anything. We witness the lynchings and the brutal mistreatment of our people, having yokes of iron upon their necks, having to serve those that did not have their best interests at heart for food, water, and clothing. We saw and witnessed our ancestors being dragged across the planet on slave ships in the East African slave trade and the West African slave trade, the transatlantic and the Indian Ocean trade war, the Middle East and the Red Sea slave trade. They don't even know that black folks were taken across the Red Sea, just like in ancient Egypt, y'all, as captives by the same group of people that say you're a color in the crayon box. But now it's time to wake up. Deuteronomy 28, verse 68. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again. The word Egypt here means bondage. With ships. With what? With ships. With what? With ships. So the Bible says that the children of Israel would go on slavery with ships. So there's people to this day that lie and say, oh, slave ships never happened. That's not true. Well, we're going to prove them wrong. We're going to prove them wrong. Watch this. Watch this. Look at this right here. Look at this right here. This is a list of slave ships right here across the web. You had the slave ship Clotilda. You had the Henrietta Marie. You had the Beckiston. You had the Brooks. You had the Aurora. You had Sarah. You had Sao Jose, Paquete, Africa. You had the Aggie. You had the Sarah, and 42 more various slave ships. Let's name them. You had a slave ship named Sarah. You had a slave ship named Vulture. You had a slave ship named the Nile. You had the slave ship named Ouida Galley or Judah Galley. You had a slave ship called La Amistad. You remember the movie Amistad? It's based on that ship. You had the Guerrero. You had the Travador. That's a French slave ship, right? You had the Tucore. You had the Duke de Maine, like the Dukes of Edom, Dumaine. There's a place called Maine right now, right, in the United States. You had Mary Seraphique. You had Hannibal. That's based on Carthage. You had the French corvette Robus. You had the Jesus of Lubeck. You had Merriman, Elizabeth, Bloom, Friendship. How you gonna have a slave ship called Friendship, y'all? If that ain't evil. You had the slave ship called Sophia. You had the Mali. You had the USS Nightingale. You had the USS Nightingale. You know that's the United States. You had the HMS Nimble. You had the Rose. What else? You had Elizabeth Hare. You had Melina. You had Bud, Elizabeth, and all these other names proving slave ships in the Bible, y'all. Proving slave ships in the Bible, y'all. Crazy work, y'all. Crazy work. Give me 1 second. I'll be right back. All right, folks. All right, we're back. We're back. So imagine, right? You have these slave ships where our people are taken captive, right? And people will lie and say these slave ships never existed, when in reality they did. They did. The history of our people held in captivity on slave ships is very true. Let's click on one of them just to get a kind of description. Here's an example right here, right? For the liars that say slavery never happened. This is the Fredensborg. Fredensborg was a frigate built in Copenhagen in 1753. She was originally named Kronprins Christian after the crown prince, the future king Christian the Seventh of Denmark and Norway, and was fitted out as a slave ship. The Fredensborg Danish slave ship sank in 1768 off of Tramoya in Norway after a journey in the triangular trade. Leif Svalsen Da wrote a book about it. You see that? That's under the list of slave ships right there. That's one example of the Danes. Let's look at the USS Nightingale. The USS Nightingale was originally the T Clipper and slave ship Nightingale, launched in 1851. USS Saratoga captured her off Africa in 1861. The USS Navy then purchased her. She was last listed in 1832, giving her a 54-year career. Nancy, 1793 voyage, John B. Cook, master in which the slaves revolted. All praises to the Most High for that thing. All praises to the Most High for that thing. Revolt, revolt and repent. All right, that's another example. Let's touch on the French one. I remember one that had a French name. Let's touch on this right here. Travador. Travador. Oh, this is a Spanish one. Travador was a Spanish slave ship that was shipwrecked in 1841 near East Caicos in the course of running transporting Africans to be illegally sold to the sugarcane plantations in Cuba. In where? Cuba. Travador, wrecked in Turks and Caicos, 1841. 193 captives survive. Project commenced in 2004 to locate the ship. Vulture, 1779 ship was launched. Y'all see that? Here's another statement right here. Triton them capture off Luango on 16 July 1860 by Mystic, 1853. I think that's another one. I think that's another one that's mentioned there. So y'all see that. Here's another one. Duke de Maine. Duke de Maine. Let's touch on that. Duke de Maine was a slave ship that on June 6, 1719, brought the first African slave to Louisiana. She had carried them from Senegambia. So for those of you, right, that don't understand this, the French were taking captives back and forth between the Caribbean islands, Haiti, and Louisiana Territory, from Senegambia to the Louisiana Territory. So the same people that speak Haitian Creole, Louisiana Creole, y'all brothers and y'all don't even know it. The same people that speak Mauritius Creole, right? St. Lucian Creole, y'all brothers and y'all don't even know it. You understand? Let's look at another example. Let's look at this Takora. Takora was a Portuguese slave ship of the early 19th century. The brig was built especially for the slave trade, although the transport across the Atlantic of human beings as slaves had already been outlawed by several nations in the international treaties in the first decade of the 19th centuries. Y'all, you think these damn pirates give a damn? They don't care. They didn't care. Takora, Portuguese slave ship that transported the slaves who would later revolt aboard La Amistad, Thames 1790 ship, was launched as at Southampton in 1790. So this is a whole entire list, y'all, of slave ships. A whole entire list. Let's read the Bible verse again. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again, meaning slavery again, with ships. By the way whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again. Meaning you're not going to see your homeland again at all. And there, and there, and there, thou shalt be sold. You shall be sold unto your enemies, not your friend. For bondmen, meaning slave men, and bondwomen, slave women. And no man shall buy you, meaning no man shall redeem you. No man shall save you. So did we just prove, using both the Bible and historical sources, that the slave trade that we witness to happen to our ancestors, that colonialism that we witness, is Bible prophecy? The answer is yes. Let's continue. Israel would be scattered and perish under the sword of their enemies. Let's go to Leviticus chapter 26, verse 33. Let's go to Leviticus chapter 26, verse 33. Leviticus chapter 26, verse 33. I think what I'm going to do, I think I'm going to share. I'm going to go to the Bible app itself and share it with y'all so y'all can see it yourselves as well. So that way y'all can read it with me. Leviticus 26, verse 33. So that way no one says, oh, Forefront, that's your own words. Let's bring it on the screen for people to see it themselves as well. Let's do that. Yeah, let's do that. Give me 1 second. Let me share the screen. There we go. All right. Hopefully everyone can see that. All right, there we go. Leviticus chapter 26, verse 33. It says, and I will scatter you among the heathen, and will draw out a sword after you, and your land shall be desolate, and your cities waste. So when we examine Zimbabwe, we find out that this history did come true. When we examine the history of what happened to our ancestors in Africa, we find out that this history came true. When we examine the history of our people scattered all over the planet, we find that this history came true. You are the ones who had enemies coming into your land and overcoming you and fighting against you due to the fact that you were trying to teach your people the truth, and they did not want to hear it, and they rejected God's laws, statutes, and commandments, and went later on into slavery. Now, when you read Joel chapter 3, verse 3, it tells us something interesting. It condemns the nations for selling God's people into slavery, scattering them across all lands, and trading them for wine and harlots. Let's go to the book of Joel, chapter 3, verse 3. Let's go to Joel, chapter 3. Let's start at verse 3. This is very important information, y'all. You will not learn this on Discovery Channel. All right, let me share the screen. Listen close. We're at Joel chapter 3. Watch this. Joel chapter 3. Let's start at verse 1. For behold, in those days and in that time, when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem, I also will gather all nations and bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat, and will plead with them there for my people, for my heritage Israel. Now listen to this. Whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land. Did this happen to Polish people that converted to a religion called Judaism? No. Did this happen to Ukrainian people? No. But did black people get scattered all across the nations globally? Yes. Did the lands of Africa and the lands of Israel get parted by European nations? Yes. Verse 3. And they have cast lots for my people, meaning auction blocks, and have given a boy for a harlot, meaning a breeder, and sold a girl for wine that they might drink. Yea, and what have you to do with me, O Tyre and Zidon, meaning the people of Lebanon, the Canaanites of Lebanon, and all the coast of Palestine, that's the Arabs and the Ottoman Turks? Shall you render me a recompense? And if you recompense me swiftly and speedily, will I return your reward upon your own head? Because you have taken my silver and my gold and have carried into your temples, meaning your museums, your churches, my goodly pleasant things. The children also of Judah and the children of Jerusalem have you sold. What does the Bible say? Have you sold? What does the Bible say? Have you sold unto the Grecians, that you might remove them far from their border? Meaning what? We were the ones that were taken out of Africa and scattered all over the planet, y'all. We were the ones that were scattered all over the world as captives, y'all. This Bible is talking about us. This Bible is talking about you. We are the lost tribes of Israel according to the Bible. That's what the book says. You understand? We are the lost tribes of Israel according to the Bible. Understand that. Now, let's go to Jubilees chapter 1, verse 13 and 14, which says, the Most High warns that when Israel forgets his commandments, that they will fall under the hand of the Gentiles, losing their inheritance until they return to him. Rhodesia's history is not just political, it's prophetic. The suffering of the Matabele, the Mashona, and various other tribes mirrors the curses placed on Israel. These are not just coincidences, folks. These are signs of who the true Israelites are. Now, our people in Zimbabwe, Malawi, Southeast Africa, Zambia, Namibia, South Africa, and various other places all over the world, right, still carry the customs that link them to Israel, from circumcision practices to dietary laws, from clan cultures and structures to names rooted in Hebraic tradition. The remnants of Israel are present. From beyond the rivers of Ethiopia, even the daughter of my dispersed, according to Zephaniah, shall bring my offering. The world has called us natives. The world has called us tribesmen. The world has called us pagans. But the Most High calls us his children. Through the colonizers' attempt to erase our heritage, the connection cannot be destroyed. This is a call to wake up, family. The horrors of Rhodesia are not just a chapter of colonial history. They are a testimony that the word of the Bible, that the word of Yahweh is true. The same oppressors who enslaved us in the Americas and enslaved us in Africa, the merchant of the nations, fulfilled prophecies of Revelation chapter 18, trading the souls of men. But there is hope. The scriptures also promises that in Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 1-3, the Most High tells us that when his people remember who they are and turn back to him, he will gather us from every nation and restore us. We are living in that time. The awakening is happening now. The lost tribes are being found, and we must wake up to the truth of this Bible and follow God's laws, statutes, and commandments. It's imperative, folks, for us to wake up. It's imperative for us to wake up and know the truth, y'all. You understand? Watch this. This has been the Forefront Radio, where we uncover the truth about Rhodesia, colonial atrocities, and the biblical identity of the Afrohebraic people. Remember, family, history and prophecy walk hand in hand. Our suffering proves who we are, but we still will understand the importance of our redemption in our Black Messiah, Jesus the Christ, also known as Yahweh Shai or Yeshua. Shalom to you. May the Most High bless you and keep you and cause his face to shine upon you all. With that, we say shalom and peace to the 12.